Lisa, one of these days I'm going to buy a farm and get away from all this.
Now, of course you will, darling.
I mean it.
I know you do. You've been saying it ever since we were married.
And I'm going to, and soon.
Oliver, how soon?
Well...
Oliver, how soon?
Yesterday.
Would you believe it, when Fred and me was first married, people used to come up to us and say, "Are you John Wayne?" I had an awful time convincing them I wasn't.
Where did this come from?
Originally from India.
Haney.
It was owned by His Royal Highness, the marijuana of Rinkatupu. That's a small town in downtown India.
Well, when you married me, you knew that I couldn't cook, I couldn't sew, and I couldn't keep house. All I could do was talk Hungarian and do imitations of Zsa Gabor.
Not just any pig. My son Arnold.
Darling, I love you, but give me Park Avenue.
Hello, I'm film historian Tony Maeda.
And I'm Brad Shreve, who's just a guy who likes movies.
We discuss movies and television from Hollywood's golden age. We go behind the scenes and share our opinions, too.
And of course, being the average guy, my opinions are the ones that matter.
As does your self-delusion. Welcome to Going Hollywood. Hey, Brad, before we start today, how'd you like to play a little game with me?
Oh, with trepidation, I am going to say okay.
It's not really a game. Do you remember, when you were a kid, do you remember this thing on Sesame Street, this song? It was actually a song called One of These Things Does Not Belong Here.
Oh, of course. One of these things is not like the other.
One of these things does not belong here. One of these things is not like the same. See, I had to sing. I had to get my singing in. Well, I want to play that game with you.
Okay.
I'm going to name 4 things, and you have to tell me which one of these things does not belong here.
Okay.
Which of these things is not like the same, like the others?
Alrighty.
Okay. Samuel Beckett, Jean-Paul Sartre, Green Acres, and Eugene O'Neill.
Ooh, I'm trying to think of the connections. I'm going to say Gene O'Neill.
Ding, 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 ding. You're right. You're right. Because what do the other 3 have in common? They are absurdist.
Yes.
They are absurdist. So, yes, Green Acres, humble Green Acres, is up there with Jean-Paul Sartre, with Harold Pinter, with Samuel Beckett. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
And you know, I agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
I have talked about doing Green Acres for some time now, and you've never said no, but you kind of always changed the subject. So then you go on vacation with a friend who talks to you about Green Acres, and all of a sudden you come back from vacation and you're like, we should do Green Acres.
Well, no, here's the thing.
I'm glad your mind was opened up.
I thought it was interesting, but my friend John, who I'll give a shout out to in West Virginia. Hey, John, Wheeling, West Virginia, loves Green Acres. And he was always getting me to watch Green Acres. Even before, you and I, for as long as I've known him, he's talked about how brilliant Green Acres is, how absurdist it is, how it's very much in the same line as these authors, their works, like Waiting for Godot, like No Exit, like The Birthday Party. And I'd be like, really? I mean, I know it doesn't have a talking pig. It has a pig as a character. But I was like, really? And then I watched them and the more I watched it, and the more I watched the episodes which you assigned to me to watch, I was like, wow, this really is out there.
Oh, yeah.
I agree. So, listener, what we did was, Brad wanted to talk about, 3 episodes of Green Acres? 4 episodes of Green Acres. But I watched the first episode as well. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do today.
Because the first and second episode kind of go together. It's almost like they had 2 pilots. One kind of a unusual pilot, which was kind of fun, and then they finally got there.
Yes, you're right. But here's something interesting. It's kind of like one of these tie-ins to the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Actually, not to correct you, but there were no pilots. CBS gave Paul Henning, who is the creator of Beverly Hillbillies and Petticoat Junction, free reign. They said, here's a half hour, make a sitcom. So he didn't have to make a pilot. He didn't have to make anything to test anything. He had it already wrapped up. So the first episode, which we're not going to talk about today, wasn't one of the episodes, but I found it fascinating. I thought it was kind of like a precursor to The Office or to Modern Family because it's in the style of a mockumentary, right?
Yes.
I found that fascinating.
Yeah, they were being introduced by I can't think of his name. Apparently it was
John Daly.
John
He used
Daly.
to host What's My Line
That's
for
where I
years
knew it
and
from.
years
Okay.
and years. Yes, yes.
They were being introduced by John Daly on a monitor, and they were talking to him, responding. At the same time, they were responding to each other.
Yeah, it was very strange. I wonder why they just did that in that one episode and why. I guess it would be kind of tiresome to try to do it through all 170 episodes of this series.
Yeah, it would have been a whole different show. Since Petticoat Junction wasn't that way, I guess they still could have done it. Because they kind of eventually became totally different universes.
There's nothing absurdist about Petticoat Junction. I mean, Petticoat Junction is a standard rural sitcom, just like Beverly Hillbillies is a standard rural sitcom. So I think it's really amazing that this series, because you're not alone. As I said, my friend John loves this series. There's a whole cult, a whole Green Acres cult out there that just find this series brilliant. And I got to tell you, after watching these episodes and doing some research, I have really newfound respect for Green Acres and for what they accomplished in this crazy series.
Yeah, let me read a quote to you. As you know, this show began in 1965 and it ran for 6 seasons.
Yes.
It was canceled in 1971 as part of the Rural Purge that we've talked about.
Our good friend, the Rural Purge.
Yes. And Pat Buttram, who plays Mr. Haney, he is credited with saying it was the year CBS canceled everything with a tree.
It's true.
So it had the Rural Purge. They got rid of, we've talked about this before, they got rid of Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, Mayberry RFD, Hee Haw. They say Petticoat Junction, but it actually canceled the year before. It really went downhill bad.
Well, after B. Benaderet died, it could never really
became
come
a
back,
musical show, and the music was bad.
And Beverly Hillbillies. I mean, the grandfather of them all was. But it, again, like Petticoat Junction, had pretty much run its course.
Yes, but here's something. This is from Noel Murray, who's a TV reporter and critic for the New York Times. He wrote this. In retrospect, Green Acres was hipper than Silverman thought, and maybe didn't deserve to be lumped in with all the other country shows.
I think that's kind of true. I do.
I agree.
They got 6 seasons out of it. That's pretty good. I mean, 6 seasons. I Love Lucy ran 6 seasons. Mary Tyler Moore ran 7.
I did look to see if there was an episode in the 6th season that would be good. And there is one that was kind of absurd because I chose one of the episodes because it was just over the top. Mm-hmm. None of the others were all that good. It was time to go. It was time to go.
Yeah, I think the unfortunate thing about that, I don't think that it's necessarily was cut too short. I think that there was no final episode. But you know what? That was not that common. We're so used to final episodes now because, they're such huge ratings getters. I mean, look at MASH. I think MASH still holds the record for last episode. And of course, the Mary Tyler Moore Show, iconic last episode. Seinfeld, God knows. But back in the day, there weren't always final episodes. There was not a final episode like wrapping everything up of I Love Lucy. There was not a wrapping up episode of Dick Van Dyke, where the characters moved away or someone got a new job. And I mean, we're so used to that now, we have to realize that was not a common practice back then.
And I'm okay with that. What's really sad, the final 2 episodes that aired of Green Acres were backdoor pilots for 2 other shows.
I hate that.
The first one was Hawaii honeymoon. Lisa and Oliver go to Hawaii and they stay in a hotel. And it was a pilot for a sitcom that was about the people that worked at the hotel.
Yeah.
Now that was the second to the last one. And then the last one was called The Ex-Secretary. And Oliver has to get in touch with his old secretary to find out where she got his watch fixed years ago. And she's living in Los Angeles working for a real estate developer at that time. That was a spin-off, not really a spin-off. It was a pilot for a show that was going to be about her. So it is kind of sad that the last 2 episodes were really not Green Acres episodes.
Yeah, yeah.
But I am glad that they did not have a final episode because, it ended in 71. I like to think that everything just continued as it was, you know.
Well, yeah, I think that's a nice thing about not having to have this final episode where some character either moves or gets a new job or gets fired. I mean, it's just like, because you can visualize them continuing in their life. You know, those castaways were never rescued off that damn island until, you know, the reunion when they could be rescued off the island. So I think that's true. Someday you and I should do a show about backdoor pilots, because I think they rarely work backdoor pilots. I think the only one I can think of off the top of my head is the Andy Griffith Show. It was on the Danny Thomas Show. It was a backdoor pilot from the Danny Thomas Show. But honestly, other than that, and if anybody has any ones they want to text us, email us, because I'd like to know. Because I'm just making this blanket statement right now.
Empty Nest off of Golden Girls.
But that was not the same premise. See, it was the same house, but totally different characters. Rita Moreno and Paul Dooley.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Were in that backdoor pilot, which was not Richard Mulligan and Dinah Manoff and Chrissy McNichol.
You're right.
So the idea was sort of there, but that's a bad episode.
Yeah, it was terrible. God. So anyway, I like to think that when Eva Gabor and Eddie Albert died, they would have been on the farm 30 to 40 years. And I like to think that's how they lived out the rest of their life. There in crazy Hooterville.
And she was only going to stay 6 months.
Yes.
6 months.
So we should begin that.
We should. Before we do that, there's something talking about things that we researched in this file. I want to say something here because this is a little pet peeve of mine. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I think we talked about this before. So I'm doing some of my research for Green Acres, and I'm seeing in the internet a couple times, you know, the first time that characters in a TV show sang their theme song. And this kind of stuff drives me crazy. Because when I was doing way back in the Stone Age, when I was doing DVD commentaries, and I think I told you this before, I mean, we had a legal department we had to answer to. And we had to cite 2 or 3 instances in order to say anything on these DVD commentaries. Warner Brothers had a legal department. 20th Century Fox had a legal department. Mm-hmm. Now, anybody can put anything they want on the internet, and everybody thinks it's true. And that drives me crazy.
Yes.
And what drove me crazy about this is I'm like, really? Have you never heard of a show called The Roy Rogers Show? Have you never heard Happy Trails to You? I mean, come on. And how about Hey, Hey, We're the Monkeys?
You didn't say what the rumor was.
No, I did. Yeah, that this was the first time TV characters sang their theme song. And that's not true. I said, Roy Rogers, Happy Trails to You. Hey, Hey, We're the Monkeys, which was actually the same year as Green Acres, but still, then give the credit to the Monkeys. So that kind of stuff drives me nuts. However, I think the reason people do it is because that song, it's such an earworm. I mean, my God, it's still going through my head. Da 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 da. I mean, it's a great song.
It also tells a story.
It does.
If you've never watched the show before and you pick it up in season 3, it tells you what you're going to.
That was a big thing in the 60s. Think about the Gilligan's Island theme is a perfect example of that.
Oh, yes.
They wanted these theme songs which told the story of the sitcom. The Brady Bunch. Hello, another legendary theme song. You know, and then when they got into the 70s and 80s, you know, it was kind of a little more esoteric. Like, you know, who could turn the world on with a smile? Or la 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 la, as you did on our road episode. But anyway, that's my little tangent for today. For now.
It's a good tangent.
It is.
Before we get started with talking about these specific episodes, I'd like to go back in time and talk about how this show, the genesis of this show.
Please do.
Now, I've heard for many, many years that it was based on an old radio show called Granby's Green Acres. But the way I'd always heard it was kind of an idea, and they fleshed out the idea that nothing really was similar. Well, I did a little research, and I actually listened to some episodes of Granby's Green Acres, and it is the same show. And Granby Green Acres was produced, written, and directed by Jay Summers, who did Green Acres, mostly did almost every episode of Green Acres. So the deal with Granby's Green Acres, it came out in 1948 and only lasted 8 episodes. It didn't do very well. The record reviews weren't all that good.
I believe it was a summer series. It was only,
was it?
Yeah, it was only destined to be 8 episodes. I mean, and then if it had a life on it, but yeah, I think it was only supposed to be 8 episodes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, well, that makes a difference. But one of our favorite stars is on there, Gale Gordon, who we know from Lucy.
Yes.
And he plays a banker in the city that wants to move to the country.
Mm-hmm.
And and you'll have to pronounce her last name for me. I always get it wrong.
Benaderet.
Benaderet. She played the banker's wife, Gale Gordon's wife.
Right.
What's funny is she later was hired to be Kate Bradley on Petticoat Junction, which Green Acres was kind of a spinoff of.
Sister show.
Yeah, it's a sister show more than
Well, here's what's interesting is, and I don't know if you found this in your research, but Gale Gordon and B. Benaderet were on Lucille Ball's radio show, My Favorite Husband. So there's a Lucy tie in here. Of course there is. There's always a Lucy tie. So these characters from My Favorite Husband, which was the precursor to I Love Lucy, were on the radio together. And of course, I've said this a million times, Lucy wanted Gale Gordon and B. Benaderet to play the Mertzes when I Love Lucy was created, but they couldn't because they were tied up with other. B. Benaderet was on George Burns and Gracie Allen, and Gale Gordon was on RMS Brooks. So they couldn't do it. So we got Vivian Vance and William Frawley, thank God. Not that I don't love B. Benaderet and Gale Gordon. But so that's also interesting that there's a Lucy connection to Green Acres.
It really is. I actually would have liked to see them as Fred and Ethel, except for the problem that we would lose Vivian Vance.
Yes.
I could do without William Frawley. But I think they would have been really good together as the team. But then we wouldn't have Vivian Vance, and we love her. So
we wouldn't. We have to.
Couldn't imagine Lucy without her.
No.
I said that it was exactly the same. I'm going to play something for you that I really found interesting. This is going to be from the first episode of Granby's Green Acres.
Oh, wow.
B. Bernadette's character is asking Gale Gordon why he wants to go to a farm.
Love it.
What are you trying to say?
Well, that I want to have the feeling of accomplishing something. On a farm, I'd have that feeling. I'd take a seed, a tiny little seed, and I'd plant it in the ground. Then I'd cover it up with dirt, and then I'd water it. And pretty soon, what would I have?
A dirty little wet seed.
Wow.
Now, that is from the first episode of Granby's Green Acres, the 1948 radio show. Now, this next one is from the first episode of Green Acres. Lisa and Oliver talking in their penthouse.
You have everything a man could possibly want. A beautiful home, a wife who loves you, a successful law practice. Yet you throw it all away to move too far.
You're darn right I would.
Why?
Because a farm would give me a feeling of accomplishing something. I'd take a little seed, a tiny little seed. I'd plant it in the ground. I'd put some dirt on it. I'd water it. And pretty soon, do you know what I'd have?
A dirty little wet seed.
That sounded kind of similar there.
Did. Although I have to say the live studio audience gave a much bigger reaction than the canned laughter for Ava Gabor's line. So I don't know.
So yeah, that is where the idea came from. And as you said, Paul Henning was the creator of Beverly Hillbillies. Now, you mentioned how Green Acres just do the show.
Yeah, kind of carte blanche. Because, here's a half hour, go make a show.
I actually was told that's the way Petticoat Junction came across, too. I don't know if that's true because I couldn't find the information.
Probably.
But I always heard that Beverly Hillbillies was such a huge hit. They said, make us another show. We don't care what it is.
Well, that also has to do with B. Benaderet. B. Benaderet played Cousin Pearl on the Beverly Hillbillies.
Yes.
And she was a wonderful character. So they're like, not really a spinoff, but, give her own show. So that's how Petticoat Junction came about. But I believe it because the Beverly Hillbillies was, hit isn't even the right word. It just was massive. There are episodes of the Beverly Hillbillies which are still among the top rated shows ever of all time on television. So, the Beverly Hillbillies was massive. So I'm sure CBS is going to be like, go do what you want to, Paul. Just make another hit.
And we will get to breaking the fourth wall, but there is an episode where Beverly Hillbillies where they go to Hooterville.
Yeah.
And she looks at Kate and says, "You're the spit image of Cousin Pearl."
The absurdist stuff is crazy. They did because they mention, and we'll get to it in the episode. Haney mentions Beverly Hillbillies in one of these episodes.
There's an episode called The Beverly Hillbillies where they do the play. They wrote...
Right, no, exactly.
And asked for a screenplay so they could do a local play to raise money.
But even before that, there's an episode where Mr. Haney mentions Beverly Hillbillies. It's the TV episode we're going to talk about. And I'm like, okay, hello, meta, like fourth wall, like this is crazy. It's just crazy.
One of my favorites is there's an episode where Ebb is sitting on the bed watching an episode of Petticoat Junction.
Yes. It's just, Come on. All right, so shall we get into these episodes that we want to talk about? Because I'm sure we'll have more fun facts as we talk.
Absolutely. The first episode that I gave you is just so we had the pilot. We know how the story began. It's actually the second episode of the show because it got a little more in depth of Hooterville. It's season 1, episode 2, Lisa's first day on the farm, and it aired September 22nd, 1965. You care to take over?
I just know, well, basically it's Lisa being introduced to the luxuries, air quotes, as you say, of Hooterville and the farm. And it's just, I love this episode. I got to tell you, what's interesting to me about this episode is Ava Gabor. Now, we didn't talk much about, the actors in this, and we will probably get to that. But, Ava Gabor, her character changed a lot, as did Eddie Albert's character. And I think that I kind of love this Ava Gabor because this Ava Gabor is she's much more sarcastic and dry in her humor. And Oliver, Eddie Albert, was much more oblivious. And as the show went on, those kind of reversed. Lisa, Ava Gabor, became oblivious.
Yes.
And Eddie Albert was just perturbed and frustrated by everything. But I really kind of liked her being the sarcastic, having the sarcastic asides and the eye rolls. And just, because when they come into the house, Haney has basically wiped them out. There is nothing. There's not a toilet. There's not a sink. There's not a bathtub. He's taken everything out of this house.
He said the deed said you got a house. That's what you get, a house.
It's hysterical. It's hysterical. So they go into this. First of all, here's what my question was always. Oliver, hello, they had a penthouse. She just adores a penthouse view. They had this gorgeous penthouse on I think they said by this time they were living on Madison, or was it Park?
They lived on Park Avenue.
Park, oh yeah, give me Park Avenue, of course, duh. This is the best that Oliver can buy in Hooterville? And the guy's got millions. And this is the house he buys? That's just kind of like, I don't know about that.
He was too excited. They showed that in the very first episode. He was just, because he was a little mad about wanting a farm.
Crazy.
He saw this land and he bought it. They go to the house and he thinks it's great, which is, yes, it's ridiculous, but it's Green Acres.
Well, it's absurdist.
There was an episode where they were going to tear down the house and they had this plans for a beautiful new home.
Mm-hmm.
And it fell through because Haney had it stopped because the house was a historical landmark. It was the home of the first governor of the state, Herbert Hooter.
Of course that was his name. Hootersville. Does Lisa call it, let me try to remember, does Ava Gabor call it Hootersville? Hootersville?
Hootersville.
Hootersville, yes.
Hooters, she puts the S in there. Hootersville.
But I really like this episode. I got to tell you, I watched the first episode with this episode because I thought it made sense to do that. I thought, first of all, they go into the bathroom, and I think this has to be the first toilet joke ever.
I agree.
On network television. You think so?
Yeah, every time I watch it, I'm like, wow, they never showed a toilet before. Granted, we don't see the stool.
They never show a toilet, and they don't show they show the commode part of the toilet, and they don't know what it is because it's got a big chain on it. And Eddie Albert pulls the chain, and of course the water comes down, and he goes, "It's a shower." And I'm like, "Oh my god, the first toilet joke ever!" But there's no bathtub, there's no sink. Amazing. I thought it was a great episode. I really enjoyed it.
What do you think of Albert's mother?
Oh, I love her. Eleanor Audley. I love her. I love the fact that Lisa's more her child than Oliver is. And it's just one of the brilliant things about this episode, because when she comes in, she's comforting Lisa, comforting Ava Gabor, and then Oliver finally says, "But you're my mother." I love it. It's just that's another one of the brilliant things about this. Well, for people who don't know, Ava Gabor is one of the infamous, I don't know if infamous or famous, Gabor sisters. If you know who Paris Hilton is, you know who the Gabors are. She was from Hungary, and she was the first Gabor. Her sisters were Jaja and Magda. And she was the first one to emigrate to the United States in 1937 by getting married, which she did 4 more times. So it's in the Gabor blood. And probably her most famous appearance before Green Acres, was in Gigi. Now, we keep coming back to Gigi for some reason on this podcast. I don't know why, but she plays Louis Jourdain's cheating girlfriend, fiance in Gigi. But I think she probably was like, there's no argument. Definitely the most successful of all the Gabor sisters, because I mean, she worked from the 40s to the 90s, and she did all those cartoon voices, the Aristocats, the Rescuers. So I mean, I think she was pretty much the most successful of all the Gabors. Zsa Zsa, more notorious.
Yes.
Ava, as I said before, was the nice Gabor.
Zsa Zsa was mainly known for marrying rich men. Ava may have done the same, but Zsa Zsa was more known for
and slapping cops.
And slapping cops, yes.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting thing about Eleanor Audley, played Eddie Albert's mother. She was born in 1905. Do you want to guess when Eddie Albert was born?
Oh, I know when Eddie Albert was born, but you go ahead and tell everybody.
1906. She's 1 year older, and she's playing his mother.
That's great. I love that. They did that a lot, though. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It's like Anne Bancroft and Dustin Hoffman. You know, when she was Mrs. Robinson, she wasn't that much older than Dustin Hoffman was. I mean, it's very funny how they do that. But she, you know, it's her appearance.
Yeah.
You know, she looks older. It's funny. What strikes me most about this episode is how their characters are different. Not totally different, but they're definitely different takes on these characters that changed and progressed over the years.
Oliver doesn't change nearly as much as Lisa does. There's a couple ways they could have gone with it. One, she could have been the straight person because he was kind of nutty in the first episode.
Right.
The other is they both were the straight people and were trying to adapt. I kind of like it that Lisa changed. I think they changed her too much. I mean, in season 1, she was this high society lady and she acted, she was still she didn't want to live on the farm. She loved her penthouse. She loved shopping, but she was also very gracious. When she met the people at Drucker's store, all the farmers, she was very sweet, witty, and so she was elegant. In season 2, she started to loosen up and be a little more fitting in. And then after season 2, or maybe during season 2, is when she really, even though she kept saying she wanted to go back to New York, she was just as Hooterville as the rest of Hooterville.
Yeah.
And she acted almost like she had a learning disability. She didn't act smart anymore. And I think it would have been funny if she did become more Hooterville-like, but they didn't make her so dumb.
Well, she's just oblivious.
Yes.
To everything. And I mean, it's, you know, and it's spelled out in these future episodes we're going to talk about, almost to the point of annoyance.
Yeah.
I actually prefer her kind of smarter Lisa, her kind of sarcastic Lisa. I don't know how well that would have worked as the series progressed, because obviously they changed the character, so she became just this kind of silly, you know, oblivious character who just took everything at face value and just ran with it. But they all did that. And then Eddie Albert had to counter that and become, instead of being this gung-ho, you know, I'm going to have a farm, and just, he had to become frustrated with everybody and everything. And that, to me, that got a little tiresome by the time we got to the 4th episode. I'm like, this poor guy. I mean, why doesn't he just leave? For Christ's sake, he can't get a straight answer from anybody. Everybody's always is pulling a fast one on him. So that got a bit annoying. I wonder why they did that. Why they didn't feel that Ava Gabor was strong enough in that original characterization. It's kind of like the sarcastic, you know, okay, I'm going to be here for 6 months because I love you, but your days are numbered, buddy. I don't know why they did that.
You know, I really like that it went the way it did, because to me, the brilliance of this show, other than this episode, and we have another episode that I chose just to be wacky, to me, what Green Acres was all about was bureaucracy. Mm-hmm. Oliver wanted to get away from the rat race. He moves to Hooterville, where there is more red tape and bureaucracy than anywhere else in the world.
I know, it's crazy.
He is constantly dealing with it. And I like the fact that he was the one that wanted to go there. He still wants to be a farmer, but he is the one that is constantly like, he never really left that. He's trapped still inside that world he wanted to leave. Whereas Lisa's the one that kind of, we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to go back to New York, but we're here. I like that. I just wish they didn't make her so out there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it got ridiculous. It got ridiculous.
It still worked for me.
Out there she was.
But this episode, we were introduced to, well, we really in the first episode, but the carryover is they did mention that they were staying at the Shady Rest,
right,
which is the hotel in Petticoat Junction. They didn't show it. I believe in Petticoat Junction, they were in the hotel one episode. I don't know for sure. We did have Joe Carson, so there was a tie-in with that. Of course, we had Sam Drucker, who wound up, he was almost like this weird, you had Petticoat Junction, which was a more traditional rural comedy. And then you kind of go to Drucker's store. And then when you leave Drucker's store and go towards Green Acres, it becomes this surreal.
Yeah, it's kind of odd, isn't it? It's kind of strange.
Yes.
It's like, I mean, there have been other characters who've straddled more than once. Here, look at Lisa Kudrow, but she was playing a different character on Mad About You, though. She was not
Yes.
Phoebe. She would appear as Ursula on Friends, but it wasn't a regular thing. This was a regular gig for him. This guy was working. I mean, thank God they filmed these series in the same studio, so he would just go from set to set, and film these characters. But yeah, Sam Drucker, he was doing double duty. Frank Cady, he was doing double duty.
Yeah.
That guy,
and he did some episodes of Beverly Hillbillies when they went to Hooterville.
When they went to Hooterville,
that drives me crazy. We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But so this episode introduced characters from Petticoat Junction that were kind of side characters. Fred Ziffel was an occasional character on Petticoat Junction. Newt Kiley is a farmer who was an occasional character, or at least referred to. And then we had the two guys that run the Cannonball. The train.
Yeah.
They were in this episode. Well, Newt continued to be a secondary, partial, walk on, walk off kind of character now and then. Whereas Fred Ziffel went from being just an occasional character to a regular.
Well, because of Arnold. I'm sure.
Because of Arnold.
Because of Arnold.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a good episode. I enjoyed this one. This was probably, well, we'll get to the other ones too. So should we go on to episode 3, which I kind of understand the the second episode you gave me to watch, which the minute I saw it, I was like, well, I know why he assigned me this one. Just the title, Water, Water Everywhere. Do you think this was really the inspiration for Robert Towne to write Chinatown? It wasn't all those things that I cited when we did our Chinatown episode. It was this episode of Green Acres called Water, Water Everywhere, which is about water rights.
They could have done a spin-off murder mystery.
They could have. My sister, my pig. My sister, my pig. It could have been a whole other thing. This was a funny episode. This was fun. I mean, just for the Chinatown allusions, I thought it was hysterically funny.
Tony, you and I get excited when we get messages and emails and texts from listeners that tell us how much they enjoy the show.
We do.
But I think we should push it a little bit and ask them to go a little bit further.
Ooh, a challenge.
If you enjoy this show, let others know. 5 stars are great, whatever you want to give, except 1 star. If you have 1 star, say, that show's not for me and move on. We accept that.
Yeah, you don't give us 1 star. Just say, no, not for me. Just skip it. Or tell your friends. That's the best way too, right? Tell your friends, hey, I have this great fun podcast with these 2 kooky guys who talk about movies and TV. We run the gamut. We have everything.
Yeah, we're all over the place.
We're all over the place is a better way to put it.
But in a good way. So do it right now before you forget. This was season 2, episode 2, as Tony says, Water, Water Everywhere, September 21st, 1966, almost exactly a year later. So tell us what's about, Tony. Well,
basically, it's about the water rights in Hooterville, because every time somebody taps into a new well, now I'm not a farmer, so I don't know the technical words for this. They tap into somebody's water line, and their water goes out whenever somebody digs a new well. Is that correct? Am I getting that I don't know the technology of it. I'm a city boy. I don't know about wells.
I think this is stretching the believability, but
well, yeah.
They tap when they dig a new well, they end up tapping into one of the neighbor's wells, and the neighbor's well runs dry.
Yes, exactly. So when Mr. Haney needs a new well, he taps into Oliver's well, and Oliver's water runs dry. So Oliver taps into a new well, and it taps into Ziffel's water, and his water runs dry. So it's just this constant, who owns the water? It's the Owens Valley and Los Angeles. Who owns the water here?
When the Ziffels dig a well, Sam Drucker's runs dry.
Yeah, that's crazy. Oh, my.
I chose this episode for 2 reasons. 1, it deals with the bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm.
And 2, it has Barbara Pepper, and I wanted you to see Barbara Pepper.
Oh, yes. And she looked good. She looked okay in this one. She wasn't, she maybe was just sick, but she looks pretty bad in some of the upcoming episodes. You can tell she's sick. But yeah, it was good to see her. We talked a bit about Barbara Pepper when I was on Queer We Are. She and Lucy came out to Hollywood together when they were showgirls.
Yes.
So she's not looking like a showgirl anymore, unfortunately. What really highlighted to me, because I'm thinking about how Lucille Ball looked in 1966, and she looked fabulous in 1966. Stunning. And Barbara Pepper. I mean, Barbara Pepper obviously had some personal issues, which led to her which eventually led to her death. But it's interesting, yeah. So there's another Lucy connection there, and it was fun to see her. I'm glad that you recommended this one.
Yeah, Barbara Pepper played Doris Siffel. If you can picture Doris Siffel, if you remember the show, as a showgirl, she was at one time. And she did have some abuse problems, and Lucy and she were friends, and Lucy stuck by her. She appeared on several episodes of I Love Lucy because Lucy always took care of her.
Right, but she never had a solid character.
No.
You know, for a while they thought of her as Ethel Mertz.
Oh, really?
Yes, but Desi was like, I mean, she just wasn't reliable. So, and now we're talking 1951. So the fact that she would have little bit parts on I Love Lucy and walk-ons on I Love Lucy, you know, but she never had a featured role in I Love Lucy like she has here. This is a character that she played. And then she sadly got sick and died, which is unfortunate, you know. But she's fun.
She looked the part. She was cantankerous. She acted like a woman that would be married to Fred Ziffel.
Yeah.
She was replaced when she died with Fran Ryan, who just didn't cut it.
She and Hank Patterson made a good team, I thought. They made a good couple. You know, they were kind of like Fred and Ethel Mertz, kind of like in a weird Hooterville way. In the weird Hooterville universe, they were kind of like Fred and Ethel.
Yeah, there is an episode in the final season that I really like where Oliver tries to get the road paved that they live on. And I wanted to have it, but Fran Ryan was playing Doris instead of Barbara Pepper. And I just didn't want to do that.
They really were like the Fred and Ethel Mertz in Hooterville, except they had a child. Well, he was a pig, but he's a child. Which I love seeing Arnold. This was, you know, seeing the mythic Arnold Ziffel. Do you know that there was an episode of Green Acres that actually made the TV Guide did a list of the greatest TV episodes of all time? And it's so funny because there's an episode from season 3, I think, called A Star Named Arnold. And it ranked number 59 on TV Guide's list of the 100 greatest TV episodes ever. Not just sitcom episodes, greatest episodes ever. I think, was it a 2-part episode? I think.
Yes, it was. Arnold's first big episode was the one right after this. It's called I Didn't Raise My Pig to Be a Soldier. Fred and Doris do a second honeymoon, much to the dismay of Fred. They go to Niagara Falls. And so Oliver and Lisa have to babysit Arnold, which Oliver is not very happy about. And during this time period, Arnold is drafted. And so Oliver has to try and convince them that Arnold is not a draft dodger, that he is a pig. And I think Oliver actually ends up in jail in that one.
He's a pig. He's not a draft dodger. He's a pig. That's very funny.
That is his first big role. But
kind of topical. Topical for Green Acres.
Yes, it was. In fact, I think they even mentioned that they didn't want him to go to war. That was never mentioned. If you think of Gomer Pyle, I don't think they ever mentioned in Gomer Pyle there was a war going on.
Oh, God, no. God, no. I'm not a big fan of Gomer Pyle anyway. So.
No, I'm not either. It was awful. What is Oliver's plan? Where did the red tape come in? Oliver wants to build a reservoir. The way the story progresses is Oliver is fed up with everybody having to dig a new well every time somebody else digs a new well. So he proposes, let's build a reservoir, and he has to explain to the citizens of Hooterville how a reservoir works and that the government helps pay for it. I love this line. He says, well, you know, it would cost us money, but the federal government will give us some money to pay for it, and the state will give us some money to pay for it.
Yes.
And Fred Ziffel says, why don't we just take their money and build a cheaper one?
That's right. Yes.
Well, it turns out that the only place to put a reservoir would be on the Douglas farm.
Right.
And so the idea is to put in a pipeline to the Pixley Reservoir.
It's Chinatown.
Yes.
This is crazy. It's Chinatown. I'm watching this thinking, This is Chinatown. Forget it.
But when they turn on the pump to bring the water from Pixley, the power goes out in the whole valley because it takes too much power to run the pump. So they shut the whole thing down and they create a new law that no one can change the water rights rule.
I love it. That was a fun episode. That's a fun episode. Yeah, cool. All right, so moving on to number 3, which is an episode, the third episode, which is an episode called How to Succeed in Television Without Really Trying, which was fun.
This was January 24, 1968. And I chose this one specifically because I wanted Tony to see one that was just wacky.
Oh my God, it's insanely wacky. It's insanely wacky, and I thought you chose it because we get to see Eddie Albert's bare chest. When he's doing his sound.
He was quite the strapping man.
Eddie Albert was a looker. We didn't really talk much about Eddie Albert. But in his younger days, I mean, he's a 2-time Oscar nominee for Roman Holiday and The Heartbreak Kid. Good-looking guy. Good-looking guy. His career was unfortunately derailed by the Red Scare in the 50s, just when he was beginning to get some momentum. His son, Edward Albert, who died 1 year after his father, was in Butterflies Are Free. Also a very good-looking guy. So they were good-looking guys. But yeah, I love that. I love when he's doing his calisthenics and he's bare chest, and I'm like, you go, Eddie Albert. All right, you go. You look good. But this is the episode where Mr. Haney mentions Beverly Hillbillies. He says, because
yes, it is.
Give the premise of this episode, because it's so convoluted, it's so complicated that I would just mess it up. So you go ahead and give the synopsis of this episode.
Okay, the premise of this show is there is a kid in the town that is kind of a kid genius, and he wants to expand his business. He basically wants to make it so a farmer can run his farm just by pushing buttons.
Automated. An automated farm. Yeah.
So while Lisa and Oliver go quickly out of town to the state capitol, which, by the way, did you know what state they're in?
Missouri.
No.
That's where Hooterville is, 500 miles from Chicago? They say that in the first episode?
To get to Hooterville from New York, because Oliver says he went there when he went to Chicago. And Lisa's like, is it near Chicago? He says, kinda. You have to change planes twice, take the bus from the county seat to Pixley, and take the little train from Pixley to Hooterville.
But isn't it documented that it's in northeastern Missouri? Hooterville is in northeastern Missouri? No. That's what
Nope.
Are you sure about that? Because I read that.
Yes, I am absolutely certain of that.
Okay.
It is like Springfield on The Simpsons.
What Springfield, Missouri?
But it is not Springfield, Missouri.
No, I know it's not I know it's not Springfield, but is it in Missouri or is it in Illinois?
They never say it. They purposely had all the different accents. People that had Southern accents had different dialects from different parts of the country.
Well, and Alf Monroe was clearly from New York. That's another thing.
And they purposely had people from New York. Jay Summers said he based it on a farm town in New York. And it had been hinted at, even though it seems like the South, it had been hinted at among the many other things that was hinted at, that Hooterville was in northern New York. However, there is an episode where Oliver tells a former coworker that, no, we are not in upstate New York, because that's where the coworker think they moved to. So, no, it is kind of hinted that they are in the Midwest, in the Ozarks, in the Appalachians.
Right.
Granny on Beverly Hillbillies kind of always hinted that she was from Tennessee, which suddenly all of a sudden they were from Hooterville.
Granny's from Bug Tussle. She's not from Hooterville.
Yes. Well, she was from Bug Tussle until all of a sudden,
and then she's from Hooterville.
1968, when they were from Hooterville.
I think we can agree that Hooterville is in a universe all its own. So
yes.
You can't. It's like you can't find it on a map. You can't find it on a map. It's a state of mind. It's like Chinatown.
It is a state of mind. Yes. And the two hints they give you as to what state it is Oliver has to go to the state capitol to meet with the governor for something. I don't remember what it was. And the governor gives him a stuffed kangaroo for his visit, because they're in the kangaroo state. In addition, the state flower is the ragweed. So if you look up what states those are, then you will know what state Hooterville is in.
That's just crazy. It is. It's in a universe all its own. All its own.
Yes. So anyway, back to this episode. Boy, we went off on a tangent.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa and Oliver are at the state capitol. This boy hooks up their house and does all kinds of stuff to it. But the biggest thing he does is he puts the barn door so that it has a moo. It's moo activated.
Moo activated.
Eleanor the cow can open and close the door. And when the door closes, the camera turns on, because he created this camera, which was a little ahead of its time, that would beam to the television what was going on in the barn so they could keep their eye on Eleanor. Now, why they would need to keep their eye on the cow, I have no idea.
No idea.
So Oliver's frustrated. They're trying to get the barn door open, and they're mooing into the lamplight, which is where the hidden microphone is.
Yeah.
So they're all pretending to be cows. Finally, Eleanor shows up and moos. Oliver goes into the barn, and the door shuts behind him, and the others leave. So now the camera is on, And Oliver is trying to make cow sounds to get the door open up. And as he's doing this, he is being broadcast throughout the valley.
They're also nonchalant about it. They're also accepting of it. Oh, it's Oliver Douglas's TV show.
Exactly.
Oh, he's got a TV show now. And it's just so funny. And then when he takes the camera, when he finally gets out of the barn and takes the camera into the bedroom and puts it down, he doesn't know it's recording him, right? And he starts to get undressed, and this is what we were talking about, he's doing his calisthenics. And Sam Drucker's sitting there in the general store watching him on his TV, like, oh, yeah, no, it's that Oliver Douglas. Oh, now he's getting undressed. It's just, they're so nonchalant about it. That's what's so funny about this show, is that they're all just, it's farce. You know, it's farce. It's a farce. They exist in their own reality.
I love that scene in Drucker's store because Sam is sitting there watching Oliver taking off his shirt. And Fred walks in and he goes, "What you watching, Sam?" And Sam said, "I'm watching Mr. Douglas. He's taking off his shirt." Fred, "Does he have an evening show too?" He goes, "What is it?" And Sam says, "He just takes off his shirt." I don't know why anybody would want to watch that.
I hope it's better than this afternoon show, I'll tell you right now.
Yes.
They're just so blasé, so nonchalant,
yes.
so of their own reality. It really is. It's absurd.
And when Sam says he doesn't know who wants to watch the show with Mr. Douglas taking his shirt off, Fred says, "Well, I think the women may like that."
And a few of the men.
And again,
a few of the men in Hooterville.
Nobody bats an eye.
I think, the thing that struck me about this episode is this was the episode that really pointed up to me how Lisa is just annoyingly oblivious to everything. I mean, she's just the whole $28 investment into this company of Ebbs and this kids, and how I don't know how Oliver doesn't strangle her at this point in the series, because she's so annoyingly oblivious. And I love Ava Gabor, don't get me wrong. She was such a wonderful actress. But the character is just so oblivious. You're like, come on, this is ridiculous. But again, absurdist. That's the whole point.
It is, and this will lead us into the fourth episode that we're talking about. There is a running gag on, for lack of a better word, I'm going to call it a gag, on Green Acres that really is emphasized in the last episode that we're going to talk about.
Okay, that one is how to get from Hooterville to Pixley without moving.
Yes, and this is from season 4, episode 12, December 25th, 1968. So this is 3 years after the show began.
Yeah, it's quite a way into the run. And when I was watching it all, what my only note is about this episode?
What's that?
I wrote, Oliver is incredibly exasperated and frustrated by the people of Hooterville, which could basically be the synopsis for any episode of Green Acres.
That is true. That is true.
Tell the people what this episode's about.
The Monroe brothers, Ralph and Alf, who have been working on the house, expand the bedroom since the beginning, well, almost since the beginning of the show.
Do you think you should say who the Monroe brothers are?
Yes.
I think that's kind of important.
Alf and Ralph Monroe are the Monroe brothers. Now, Ralph is actually a woman, and they do in one episode say why she got a boy's name. I don't know if I think it's because they wanted a boy. She actually became a lesbian icon at one point.
She did, but here's the thing about Mary. It was played by Mary Grace Canfield, who did a lot of episodes. She was on a Bewitched episode. She played when Alice, this is another tangent, when Alice Pierce got sick and she could no longer work on Bewitched as Gladys Kravitz, she played Gladys Kravitz's, she was a substitute for Gladys Kravitz on Bewitched. She was her sister. She was on an episode of Andy Griffith where she played Gomer's date, a very quote-unquote unattractive girl. I hate to use that word, but so she was not a looker, okay? And that was her character. And I believe that Ralph Monroe is TV's first non-binary character. What do you think? Don't you think so?
You are correct. You are correct.
So the thing is, is that Alf and Ralph, the reason that he always refers to her as his brother, because nobody would want to hire a female construction worker, which, hello, it's 1966, 67, so give us a break.
So their company is the Monroe brothers.
Right. So they refer to each other as their brother, even though she's a woman. She's clearly a woman. And Alf Monroe is played by Sid Melton, who is a character actress. He was probably most well known for being on the Danny Thomas Show. And he's the one with the New York accent, the New York dialect. So it's so funny because you're in the middle of Hooterville and there's this character clearly from Brooklyn.
Totally. And nobody ever questions it.
Nobody ever questions it.
They don't try to hide it. It just is the way it is. So anyway, Oliver is fed up because he wants them to finish this bedroom, which I will tell you by the time the show ended in 1971 was still not done.
No.
Because when they first move into the house, it looks like a closet. And it's really ridiculous how squeezed in they are for the first several episodes. But they've expanded the bedroom, and it's just a mess, and they never finish it. But Oliver is fed up. He says, you've got to finish this. I'm not going to pay you till you finish it. And it comes up that they need a license. They said they forgot the license. They forgot to get a license. So Oliver says, I will take care of it. So he and Lisa go into the county seat. They want to get a building license, and he tells them that he's at the old Haney place, which is the address. The guy opens up the map, and he sees that the barn is in Hooterville, but the house is in Pixley, which causes confusion. And so Oliver gets the permit, and he goes back, and he tells the Monroe brothers that he got the permit, and they look and they say, wait, it says this is in Pixley. He's like, yeah, because we found out the house is in Pixley. Well, they pack up their stuff and leave because they belong to the Hooterville Carpenters Union, not the Pixley Carpenters Union.
Yeah, that's so funny. Isn't the welcome wagon? The welcome wagon shows up from Pixley. This is what is so absurd about this episode is everybody finds out immediately that this has happened. So next thing you know, suddenly the Pixley welcome wagon is at the house, and they want back taxes, right?
Yes.
Like minutes later, they're there. The tax assessor's there to get back taxes from Oliver. And Oliver's like, what the hell? I just found out about this, but everybody and Lisa goes along with it. She doesn't go, wait a minute. We just found out. She's like, well, you need to pay your taxes. It's the absurdism it can be a little frustrating, to be honest.
The guy was saying, you owe taxes. Oliver's, no, I don't. And Lisa said, well, we're in Pixley. And Oliver says, yes. Well, you shouldn't have moved to Pixley. So to her, it makes sense. We're in Pixley now, so we shouldn't have moved. And everybody keeps saying, you shouldn't have moved to Pixley. And I was like, I didn't move to Pixley.
That's the whole thing. It's like Eddie Albert is incredibly irritated and frustrated with these people, as he should be. He's living in reality, and everybody else is living in La La Land. It's just, it's a bit, for me personally, it's a bit much. I love it. I get it. I like it. But I'm like, oh, come on. But it is funny. It's so funny.
And in the end, we'll tell you that the house is in Hooterville, but the barn is in Pixley. However, the rest of the farm is in Crabwell Corners. So they are mighty big towns, apparently, at least land-wise.
That's kind of true. I grew up, I grew up in a small town, but my parents moved to a farm, and, there were the townships. They're very serious about that stuff. What township lines are and where it's true. It's true. And when that surveyor's out there trying to survey and get the land, that's the way they are, because that's their job.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's very important to these people in these small towns. Here we don't know where we live. I'm in Hollywood. I'm in Los Angeles. I'm in West Hollywood. Who the hell knows? But very, very important in these townships. And I did like that about this episode. That was very funny. It's a very funny episode, but it was starting to wear me out. I'm like, if one more thing happens to this poor guy, poor Oliver, why is he still there?
Because he wants to be a farmer.
But does he have any joy in it anymore? That's the thing. His life is just one headache after another, and his wife is no help whatsoever.
No, she's not. That was just the premise of the show.
Yeah, I guess it was. So this was its next to last year, right? And it had one more season?
No, this was the fourth season, and there were two more. It's 6 seasons.
Oh, there were 2 more seasons. So then the Beverly Hillbillies came to visit in 1968?
This was on the Beverly Hillbillies, and this is what drives me crazy. They always went home to Bug Tussle. That's where from day one, that was the big city. Yeah. Well, all of a sudden, 1968... Granny wants to go home to Hooterville to celebrate Thanksgiving.
Yeah, exactly.
And she knows Sam Drucker. She has a crush on Sam Drucker. So Sam Drucker showed up in 3 different TV series. Petticoat Junction, Green Acres, and Beverly Hillbillies. And actually, I guess that could be true of most of the major cast members, because they did all cross over.
Well, here's what I think is crazy is that now I have never seen the episode where the Beverly Hillbillies visited Petticoat Junction. But I assume that B. Benaderet was no longer alive.
I think that may have been her last year.
Okay, because didn't any of them think, my God, you look an awful lot like our cousin Pearl?
Yes, that's the one where Granny says, you are the spitting image of my cousin Pearl.
Oh, okay. See, I haven't seen that one, so I have to, I don't know that. I don't know all of TV history. I haven't seen that one. I'll have to watch it, because at least they acknowledged it. I mean, that's one of the funny things about this show, are the meta moments in them. But I just think it's so funny that they refer to the Beverly Hillbillies, and then the Beverly Hillbillies are on the show. And it's just this constant absurdism.
And there's been talk about whether or not this is the first TV series to break the fourth wall. And examples they give, well, maybe it wasn't, because you had Jack Benny and you had Burns and Allen and even Dobie Gillis.
Yeah.
But they kind of stopped and they talked to the audience. Whereas this show, it was a constant running gag where, Lisa is making breakfast and she pulls out the toast and it says directed by Bear. And then the next piece of toast says written by. And then the next piece of toast said, also written by. And that is a total running grope. Sometimes they're picking up the eggs in the yard and the credits are on the egg. There's a great episode where Oliver is in the bedroom and they're running through the credits and he's not really looking at them, but he's there while the credits are running. And he walks over to the closet door, which whenever he slides the closet door, it goes off the rail and falls down. So when Oliver does that, it slides over, it falls down, and it says carpentry by the Monroe brothers. And Eddie Albert looks and goes, they don't get credit. And then goes on about his day.
It's astounding to think that. Do you think this went over people's heads? I mean, no, it couldn't have. I mean, I don't know. I just find it really funny, just absurdism, and that you understand why there's cults for this TV show, because it really is so incredibly absurd. The situations, the characters are just mind-bogglingly, frustratingly absurd. For me, it gets to be a bit much, but. It's because I like my sitcoms to have a dose of reality. I don't mind a little absurdism. I find it humorous. But by the end, I'm just like going, come on, give this poor guy. I feel bad for Eddie Albert, basically. I feel bad for him. I'm like, this poor guy just wants to have a farm and have a simple life, and these people are driving him nuts. But hey.
There are a lot of running gags in this show.
Yes.
And one of them is Oliver's speeches about why he wants to be a farmer.
Oh, I know this one. Yes.
And originally, he did it in the very first episode, and I think he did it in the second episode. And he did it throughout season 1 and in season 2. But all of a sudden, he continued to the end of the series. But in season 2, I think, definitely season 3, whenever he did his little speech, a fife would play.
Yes.
And here's an example of his speech and breaking the fourth wall.
You always live on a farm.
Oh, no. I used to live in New York. I was a lawyer.
Why'd you move out here? Were you disbarred?
No. I came out here to get away from the rat race of the city. Out here where I could breathe the pure air, work the fertile soil, where a man can plant his seeds and watch them shoot upward toward the sun and the sky, just as our forefathers did. The farmer's the backbone of America. It's his gnarled hands and aching back that gives America its great strength. Without the farmer...
How do you do that?
Do what?
Talk and play the pipe at the same time.
And they all look around for where the fife is coming from, where the music's coming from.
Well, he's always like, what fife?
And he's the only one who doesn't hear it. That's so funny.
And one of my favorite of the opening credit, actually, it is my favorite of the opening credit fourth wall breaks, is Fred Ziffel, Hank Kimball, who is the county agriculture agent, and Sam Drucker are in Drucker's store and they're discussing something. Whatever they're discussing, it's the MacGuffin for the series, for that episode.
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking and the credits are showing while they're talking. And finally, I think it's Sam that says, hold it. Nobody's going to pay attention to us while those credits are running. And all three of them plop down like on a pickle barrel, one on a seat, and they plop down and wait till the credits are over. And Fred goes, okay, that was the last one. And then they get up like nothing happened and continue with their conversation.
It's so funny.
To me, it's brilliant.
I love it. It's so funny.
And ahead of its time, I think.
It is. And it's beloved by people. I mean, there was the reunion in 1990, right? Which I think every we got a sigh from Brad about the reunion. 1990s Return to Green Acres.
Yes. And here's the thing about Return to Green Acres. After Eddie Albert signed on, unfortunately, apparently he did not read the script or there were changes. He then went to his attorney and said, how do I get out of this? And his attorney said, just do it and get it over with. That's how bad the script was. It was awful.
That's a shame.
Awful.
But these two were such a great couple together. Did you know that Eddie Albert and Ava Gabor actually did a play together? They were on Broadway together in a revival of You Can't Take It With You.
No, I didn't know that.
And which is great. I mean, because they really were wonderful together. They're wonderful. And there's a character in You Can't Take It With You. There's a countess. So Ava Gabor was perfect for that character. But they're so linked in this one show, which ran 6 seasons. But I mean, I think there's such goodwill and good feeling about these two actors together, particularly. They have wonderful chemistry, and they obviously enjoyed each other very, very much.
Yeah, they were friends till the day she died. She died first. Think about it. This was 1965. They had one bed. They shared a bed, which was, that was very new then. I don't think they were the first. And also they touched each other all the time. There was a lot of intimacy between this. You believe this is a couple.
Yes.
As crazy as the show is, they kiss a lot. They touch each other a lot. You really believe this is a married couple.
No, I think they have wonderful, wonderful chemistry. And I think that's something that can't be faked. And I think that's probably the reason why one of the reasons why the show worked so well is because of these two people who had wonderful chemistry. And it obviously carried on, throughout the rest of their careers.
I do want to ask you if you knew one thing about the script.
Okay.
Ad-libbing was never allowed on this show.
Well,
they were required to stick to the script verbatim with no changes. They were never allowed to make a change.
Yeah, I'm sure, because when something's so tightly constructed, yeah.
Yes. All the actors I've seen interviewed about it, they said they had no problem with it. They said there's nothing we could have done to make it any better.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't know that there was a lot of ad-libbing, period, in these one-camera shows. I just don't think it was. I think they were so tightly constructed and they were on such a schedule that it was very difficult. I think that was probably standard operating procedures and shows like that. You did not ad-lib on Lucille Ball's show, I'll tell you right now, unless you wanted to be off of Lucille Ball's show. So, they were tightly run machines, and that is, for good or bad, for better or for worse, that's the way they were run.
And I do have one other pet peeve in addition to them making Lisa too dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And that is continuity. During the first season, it was very strong continuity. Obviously, there's a few things here and there. And, that's a lot back in the 50s and 60s. There were no reruns, so they didn't really pay that much attention to it. Star Trek was one that had a book, and even they failed at it. But they had a very strict book that all writers were supposed to read. Green Acres in the first season really stuck to the continuity, and time moved pretty much in real time. Second season a little bit, but after that, you could pick up an episode anywhere. Nothing was, there was no continuity whatsoever.
Yeah, we talked
just like the Clampets going back to Hooterville instead of Buck Tussle.
No, I think that's something that we get because we see reruns and we see them over and over again, and we're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. But then again, you're asking, there's no sense to this whatsoever.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I also think they didn't care. This is weirder than Oz.
They didn't care. But you can kind of forgive it. You know what? I can forgive it in Green Acres, which is an absurdist sitcom. Whereas, with the Lucy show, when she, by the 4th, 5th, and 6th season, she forgets she has kids.
Yeah.
I think her son has one appearance and he's mentioned one other time, and it's not even the right name. And so, when the show is grounded in reality and they do that stuff, that's one thing. But with the Green Acres, I guess I can kind of forgive it because the whole show is absurd. I'm amazed if there had been a final episode, I bet it would have been Oliver waking up in his Park Avenue penthouse saying, I just had the craziest dream. And his wife would be Zsa Zsa.
Go back and watch this despite Tony's frustration. Watch it because you probably have always thought this is a stupid show, and it is, but it's a genius stupid show.
No, I really appreciate it. I'm glad you wanted to do it. It really did, because I've always heard this. Like I said, my friend is a big fan, and I've always heard that it wasn't like it was a lot more intelligent than people remember. And unfortunately, it does get lumped in with these rural sitcoms like the Beverly Hillbillies, like Petticoat Junction, because they all got canned at the same time. Hee-haw. But it's not. It is. It's absurdist, as I just said. Jean-Paul Sartre, Harold Pinter. I mean, come on. So I recommend watching the first 2 episodes, definitely, and then maybe the TV one, because I think that's just hysterical. I think it's just such a funny episode.
Definitely watch the first season. If you don't like too wacky, I mean, it's wacky, but it really goes into hallucination land after the first
Yes,
season.
it does. It does. It's like it's like an acid trip. An acid trip
really is.
in Hooterville. So
I quoted the thing that was written by Noel Murray with the New York Times. I'm going to finish that thing. This is TV reporter and critic for the New York Times, Noel Murray. And here's the full thing that he wrote. In retrospect, Green Acres was hipper than Silverman thought and maybe didn't deserve to be lumped in with all the other country shows. After all, Summers never expressly indicated Hooterville's location. It's been variously pinpointed as the Midwest, the Ozarks, Appalachia, and upstate New York, and the cast deployed a range of accents from blue-collar redneck to New England innkeeper to Chicago ward boss.
that's nice. That's a nice thing to end with. So it gets its due. It really does get its due.
Yes. Sit back and enjoy time in the kangaroo state.
With ragweed as the stage flower. Well, I guess there's just one more thing to say, Brad, which I don't want to say. So let's not say goodbye. Let's just say au revoir.
Darling, I love you, but no, let's say goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody.
This has been a Filmways presentation, darling.
My sister, my pig. My sister, my pig.